Welcome to Shoreside, the Coastal Resilience Podcast and the most resilient podcast in the world. Funded by the Department of Homeland Security, broadcasting out of beautiful Chapel Hill, North Carolina, we speak with the undisputed experts in coastal resilience. Bruce Rosenblum back with you. It's a perfect fall day outside the studio, feeling so very thankful to be here ahead of the holiday season. Also, very thankful to have you here with us. We love our listeners, and we definitely appreciate you. And if you happen to follow government Twitter, then you saw that DHS gave Shoreside a nice little plug. That might be the first time a podcast got plugged like that, and for good reason. We do some very important work here. And it goes without saying, we don't speak for DHS, but CRC is, in fact, a DHS Center of Excellence. And excellence is what we bring. Our next guest really drives that point home, and we're so very proud to have him on. He is the man who put Puerto Rico on the map for coastal engineering. So very few people can claim to have changed the course of history as educators, but he's done that. And the US Army Corps of Engineers, they know all about it because he was the guy that gave them hundreds of students. And those students are now leading the coastal research and development efforts for America. Introducing Professor Ismael Pagán-Trinidad. Professor, I'm so glad we can make this finally happen.
Thank you, Bruce, for having me here. It's a great pleasure, and I'm pretty sure it will be a great time sharing with you our stories and our experiences. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. It's an immense pleasure for me and for the entire center, too. Let me ask you, how was your meeting last week at the National Science Foundation?
Well, it was great. This is a great experience being part of the advisory committee, the external advisory committee for the engineering directorate. We discussed most of the National Science Foundation policies and expectations, and we have a great opportunity to collaborate and to bring back input to the future activities and future agenda of National Science Foundation. We are very grateful and proud of being part of that group.
And you've been working with them for a long time, right?
This is my second year. This is a 3-year appointment, and it's been a great experience.
Ooh, very, very exciting. We'll talk about the present in a bit, but I want to get into the past right now. And I actually want to jump into something actually very serious because you've been privy to some serious disasters. That's pretty much the nature of living in the Caribbean. Storms are a way of life. Resilience, it's a way of life out there. Let's go back to the 1985 Puerto Rico floods. Now, when those floods were destroying the island, you were an instructor. What exactly were you doing at that time, and what do you remember about that incident?
Actually, I think you are talking about a tropical depression that went over Puerto Rico, and we experienced like in some places like almost 30 inches of rainfall in 24 hours. And that was not even a tropical cyclone. That was a tropical depression, which maybe people have the wrong impression that you have to have a hurricane or a big cyclone to have a disaster caused by rainfall, but that's not true. And during that time, we have very extreme rainfalls, and we had extreme effects all around the island. And that was a great experience for our people to learn. And we have many causes of extreme rainfall: tropical fronts, tropical depressions, cold fronts from the north, thunderstorms that really hit localized areas or the whole island. And actually, that was in 1985. The last events have been during this week. We've been having floods everywhere in Puerto Rico in different areas, particularly urban floods, which it's continuous. That's a recurrent episode in Puerto Rico, and we learned, but we are still a long way to go in terms of being totally prepared and resilient for the future.
A lot must have changed between now and then, especially in terms of the infrastructure. What have you seen over the course of your stay down there? Has it gotten better or is it getting worse?
Well, the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that most of the infrastructure is based on codes and regulations and design processes. And codes and regulations get updated as the time goes by and as you learn from experiences. And we had a 1975 guideline for flood mitigation projects. And from there until today, those guidelines and codes have been updated. That means that even after Maria, we have what it's called advisory maps. Those are not the official FEMA regulatory maps, but those are the ones that were developed based on Maria's experience. Although they are not still the official FEMA maps, those are the ones required by the state to be used in federal funding projects, because those are using the most recent data, which is in many cases, and I remember identifying like 18 different rivers with one of their top 5 floods in history. And those maps in many places are more critical than the one that we had before. And I think those will be adopted sometime in the future, but still, those are just based on extreme rainfall. We had 88 inches of rainfall in more than a day, in some places more concentrated than others. But remember that we are working also with climate change, seawater rise, and we need to be prepared for the future to make sure that we combine our riverine floods, extreme floods, with the coastal floods, and that will be the compound flooding in our coastal communities, which we happen to have 44 municipalities close to the coast. And we have like 500,000 people exposed to flooding. That means that in the future, based on different scenarios, we will have a great impact in terms of seawater rise and the compound floods in the whole island.
You mentioned climate change, and that's the hot button issue right now because of the sea level rise. And all professionals in our sphere, as you know, are scrambling to figure out solutions to the problems that are fermenting due to that sea level rise. What's the outlook in Puerto Rico right now? You mentioned a couple of things, but dial it down for our listeners out there, if you could.
Well, as you know, and everybody knows, most of the expectation or projection of seawater rise are based on assumption, projections, and scenarios. And at this time, well, there is a projection that the seawater is rising at a significant rate, but we are still debating what will be the projection for like 2050, 2100. I mean, by the end of the century, I heard projection from 3-foot high water rise, even to 10-foot water rise in certain places. Of course, those are extremes. I think the reality will be somewhere in the middle. As you know, the temperature is changing more rapidly than expected. I think everywhere. Actually, we had a meeting yesterday with a university, New York University in Albany. There was a roundtable with FEMA, and one of the issues was discussing the projection with seawater rise. And it seems, well, the thing that we all are sure is that we are going to have a seawater rise. And our infrastructure, our communities in the coast, our seaports, airports, and most of the infrastructure will be exposed to this seawater rise. And if we don't begin working on that from now on, it would be too late in 10 years. It would be too late in 20 years because we need to be prepared. It's a slow process, but rebuilding and readapting, I think it's slower than the way that seawater rises.
I'm with you. I would say personally, things are becoming fairly critical in this domain. That's why we're so thankful to have professionals like you and the rest of your crew working on solutions to these dire problems that are facing us right now and facing all these shoreside communities. But you mentioned a storm a little while back, and I want to dial in on that. We talked about the floods back in 1985, and those floods, they actually spawned the deadliest landslide in North America to date. But that disaster, it really doesn't even compare to another one. I'm talking about Hurricane Maria, which is what you mentioned. This storm, as you know, it killed about 3,000 people on your island. Tell us, what did that storm look like from where you were sitting at the time?
Well, let me go back then to 1985. In 1985, there was a huge landslide in Ponce. That was a Mameyes site. I had the opportunity of being in a crew from the university that we went there to learn from the experience. It was devastating, although it was a informal development in a area outside the downtown in Ponce. It was catastrophic because it was in a karst region mountain, which actually slumped down, and there were hundreds of families there, and I think over 100 people died there. But also there was a bridge which was flushed away, and about 29 people were jumping to the river without noticing because the rainfall was so extreme. And we had the opportunity of studying that event also. But in that case, we had floods everywhere. And that was a disaster, localized disaster in many places. Talking about Maria, this is a lifetime experience. You know, Maria, it was almost Category 5 when it arrived Puerto Rico. It entered as Category 4, 155 miles per hour, with rain gusts that might be 180, 185. And you don't need a minute to break down a structure. You need a gust. And actually, the hurricanes have a very the spatial and temporal distribution of hurricanes. It's significant, and there is a false impression in Puerto Rico that we all experience a Category 4, almost 5 hurricane in the whole island. That's not true. The area where the Hurricane I went through, I think they experienced the most critical impacts of the hurricane. The whole island experienced very extreme winds and extreme rainfall. But just to give you an idea, where the storm passed through, were 38 inches of rainfall were accumulated in over a day.
38 inches.
38 inches in a little bit over a day, couple of days. But in the west part of the island, there were places that only recorded 5 inches of rainfall, and that's nearby where I am. Yeah. The wind speed in this area could be 110 miles per hour, far away from 155 and a wind gust of over 180, and there is a huge variability in the whole island. Recently, we had Fiona. The Fiona pass was to the west coast in Puerto Rico, and in certain places, the effect of Fiona, which was a Category 2 hurricane, were worse in the west coast than what Maria did in the west coast. not compared to the East Coast, but because the hurricane track was to the West Coast, where most of the extreme winds were accumulated, and rainfall was very extreme, actually much more than what Maria brought. But we have, I think, 4 or 5 hurricanes around the island after Irma and Maria. And that combined with other extreme events that we have experienced during that time.
Boy, it's a real scary thought to think that a lesser hurricane, a Cat 2 hurricane, can cause more damage than a hurricane just shy of a Cat 5. But you're saying that is what happened in certain parts of the island.
Exactly. And it's because the spatial distribution of wind and rainfall, it decays with distance from the center of the hurricane. That means that if you have a centralized part where you have the extreme events, the extreme winds, well, if you move away, like we are maybe 70 miles from that place where the center of the eye passed through, well, the winds were less. And remember, we always have rain gusts. I remember during Maria, I had a chance to come out of my house because the winds were not that extreme. There were some rain gusts very extreme. And maybe you are aware, but we had over 70,000 landslides in Puerto Rico. And that was all around the island. That means that we accumulated a lot of rainfall everywhere. But it's not the same. 38 inches of rainfall in a basin, that might be point rainfall, to 5 inches of rainfall to the West Coast. Although 5 inches of rainfall in a small, steep, impermeable basin like those that produce flash floods are enough to produce very extreme floods here.
And I imagine that flooding just wreaks havoc on structures, but also the flora and the fauna. And I want to get a little personal here for a moment, because I believe you may have been affected in a special way by this. What can you tell us about avocado trees and mango trees?
That's very interesting, because there is a saying in Puerto Rico that whenever you have many avocados on your trees, and during summertime, that would be a great one of those very strong hurricane seasons. I learned that from my father one time ago when he was a farmer. But, well, actually, those are things that people thought. But during Maria, I had 3 avocados in my tree. I put a plastic bag to protect them, and none of them fell down. That means that even we had a hurricane going over Puerto Rico, I saved my 3 avocados, and that's a funny story. But that tells you also that the wind distribution is not even all around the island. But we had many trees in my hometown that they were pulled out from the roots everywhere. And of course, we have a lot of extreme topography and relief. And those areas where we have higher mountains, well, the winds accelerate and the impacts are extreme. And we had very bad impacts all around the island in all the infrastructure, natural and built.
I love your avocado tree story. I think there's a lesson in resilience encapsulated in that story. It's the fledgling avocados being preserved despite Mother Nature just trying to destroy so many things.
That was very funny, but I was trying to save my farm, and that's only one tree.
And speaking of lessons in resilience, I understand that after Maria, you were back in the community doing work and putting on workshops for people. What can you tell us about that?
Actually, part of our Coastal Resilience Center project. Our project's main title is Education for Improving Resiliency of Coastal Infrastructure. And it's because Puerto Rico, most of our population is located in coastal communities. Coastal communities are exposed to so many different hazards, like floods, like tsunamis, earthquake, extreme winds, and sometimes, most of our infrastructure could be evaluated as weak or vulnerable, exposed, and that combination brings you risk. And that means that our coastal communities are in a very high risk on multi-hazards. But floods and wind are the most extreme ones. Although we didn't have an extreme earthquake since 1918, we experienced in 2020 a series of earthquakes, which we had at least 5 or 6 very extreme ones, 6.2, 6.3 earthquake, which affected the southwest coast of Puerto Rico and destroyed many structures and put in a very bad situation many communities. And we are in a very high exposed area for earthquakes because we have faults to the north, to the east, to the south. We have new faults after these earthquakes. And that means that if you have earthquakes, you also may have tsunamis. We had one in 1918. We may have one anytime, whenever we have an extreme earthquake. That means that coastal communities not only need to be prepared for seawater rise and climate change, to riverine floods and thunderstorms floods and urban floods, nuisance floods, but also to tsunamis. And right now we have a project with TRB, Transportation Research Board, that we are, based on what we have been doing in resilience, we're studying equity and resilience for coastal communities based on transportation accessibility. Yeah. Because that's the transportation network really is one of the main networks that will need to support everything that you do in the whole resilience cycle. And that's something we have developed in our Coastal Resilience Project. We begin with learning, and that's one of our goals with our project, is to make sure that people understand all the stages of the resilience cycle. And we work with formal and professional education. And we love to have in the same room first responders, professionals in practice, communities.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I am back.
It's resilience.
Yeah.
We pick up, we move on. That's how we do it at the CRC, also in UPRM.
Yeah. That's part of our accidents. But actually, what we do is just try to, through education, engage students, faculty, the community, first responders, professionals, such a way that they can not only learn the fundamentals of the physics and phenomenology of these events, but also that they can get engaged, develop leadership, and move on in terms of not only helping what they are doing, but they can switch and bring and come into the Homeland Security enterprise and to the workforce in the federal government and locally. Actually, there is a very high demand for people working in the reconstruction of Puerto Rico. But what we have learned along the way with our project and our experiences is that we proposed this in 2015. We began in 2016. The only thing we had in 2016 was a drought. Shortly after, we have Irma and Maria. Then 6 months after, we had a drought during summertime. Then we had the earthquakes. And then we had more hurricanes. We had floods that had nothing to do with hurricanes. Then we have the COVID-19, and recently we had Fiona, but we also have the Saharan dust clouds that come over Puerto Rico. Well, that means that we are continuously adapting to whatever the challenge is. But the resilience cycle goes from learning the physical part, the phenomenology of the events, going into the hazard, the vulnerability, the exposure, that means risk, then preparedness, and then we go through the events, we respond to the events, we learn from the event, we try to improve our resilience, we learn along the way because the education is all around the cycle, and then we go to a new stage, aiming that for a new event similar to what happened, we could be stronger, better prepared, and we can respond better. And that's our whole objective, and that fits perfectly into formal courses, into panels, which we call, we call the community, put them together, and we call them conversatories. Actually, that word it doesn't exist in English. We're initiating that, but conversatories are panels of experts, including the community, that we exchange ideas from all parts, but we try to record that and we deposit that in a repository we call Interactive Learning Hub, which we make available to our students and our community. They can come to our Learning Hub. They can do it anytime during the day, during the night, and we can even issue a certificate of participation. That's something we felt it's a very useful to our community, and we have been putting there so many activities, I think more than 70 activities during our past 8 years. But some of those activities, actually I sent you the proceedings of one of the one that we did in 2022 with the US Army Corps of Engineers. We have developed great partnerships, particularly with the US Army Corps of Engineers and other partners in Puerto Rico, but we are collecting all this information. But one thing that I learned, because all this cascade of extreme events happened after we proposed this, because we actually consider since the 90s that natural hazards and extreme events are a priority for Puerto Rico. And we decided to get into that. All of a sudden, we have a living laboratory all around us. And then we had the chance to bring students to the field, work with teams in the community, coordinate educational activities, and actually help many people that were in need of advice or learning or supporting their initiatives to move forward.
I really, really love that. You framed natural disasters in Puerto Rico as being challenges. That's a generous way to put it, because your island has been battered repeatedly by Mother Nature, but you're still coming back and you're still living, in fact, thriving. Textbook case of resilience and coming back. And when it comes to these things, people, it's tough for everybody involved, but people, they're looking for understanding and a connection to resources. They're looking for hope. You're giving people that hope with these workshops. And I understand everybody gets a certificate as well. Is that right?
Right. Certificate of participation, we accumulate their contact hours, and then we keep a record of their cumulative contact hours. And I think we have, 17,000 contact hour person. That means one person can have 150 contact hours. But if you multiply that, all the people that have participated, about over 3,000 different persons have participated, from federal to local to students from high school and elementary school.
And what was the impetus for starting this? Obviously Maria, but what really made you say we need to get this going for everybody on the island?
Well, you mean the project, or you mean after Maria?
The workshops after Maria.
Oh, actually, the workshops were part of our proposal when we began our project, and we were not thinking about Maria or Irma or any of those extreme events. We were preparing for the future. And we thought that it is important for two things. One, to make sure that students in high school and college understand the high priority of extreme events, of risk, of exposure, of being prepared, because that has a very high cost to the state. And we need professionals to lead the changes for the future. Mm-hmm. And we thought that we have great students, great faculty, great talent in Puerto Rico, which I think they can contribute not only locally to their communities, their municipalities, the island, but also nationwide and worldwide. And that's what's been happening. Actually, when we began doing this, there are not that many people talking about resiliency. Now, everybody is talking about resiliency. It's not because of us. It's because the way the world have been changing, and because the high priority that the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security and their strategic plan, the public policy in the United States and Puerto Rico have put this as a high priority. But not only they have put this as a high priority, they have put funding behind that, because without funding, we cannot do anything. One of the things that we discussed in the National Science Foundation is a high priority that natural hazards and technological hazards have in terms of the research, basic research. It's needed for the future. And most of the federal agencies are involved in any which way that they feel like it's important for them, but they have their own strategies. And thank God, I think that's you see that what one agency is doing, it's parallel to what another agency is doing, and that means that there is redundancy and people are converging. And what I see is that even if you come from a federal agency, local agency, a private industry, a non-for-profit organization, I think people are converging in terms of putting a very high priority in dealing with risk mitigation,
yes,
hazard mitigation. And it's extremely important that the whole community, not only the government, because the government is us, each one of us, I think everybody needs to have a priority in getting involved and participate in the whole process.
It takes a village, no question. And you've been making it a priority long before this, all the way back in the 80s. We'll get to that in a moment, talking about your career here. As a matter of fact, let's talk about that right now. Your career, Professor, it's spanned decades and across oceans. Lots of stuff to talk about here. I want to mention a name that might bring you back to where it all started for you. What can you tell us about Dr. Rafael Rios Davila?
Oh, it's interesting because in I graduated from this school in 1975. At that time, I was so happy I graduated because I could have more time to play baseball. That was my passion, and it's still my passion. But next day after I graduated, I had the opportunity of working for the flood control office in the Department of Transportation and Public Works. Then I discovered public service. Well, before a semester, that was June 1st, 1975. Before that semester ended, Dr. Rafael Ras, who was the provost in Georgia Tech, and then he was the professor in MIT, director of the department, and then moved to California, Irvine, and then Georgia Tech. And they had a project which I remember had to do with point and non-poisons of pollution. They got that project, one of the first practical research project done for EPA at that time. And then they were recruiting graduate students. I decided to leave my job and come back for a master's here. Then I began working with modeling rivers in the metropolitan area in terms of the impacts of point and non-poisons of pollution in the community. Then I discovered hydrology and hydraulics. After finishing my master's here, I went to the University of Illinois. And my chairman in my master's program was Dr. Rafael Rios Davila. Very interesting person because he had a bachelor's degree in mechanical and electrical engineering, a master's degree in nuclear engineering, and a PhD in environmental engineering, very diverse. Then we had the chance to work together, and thanks to Dr. Brass and Dr. Rafael Rios Davila, I finished my master's. Then I went to the University of Illinois. I studied under Dr. Ben Yen and Harry Wenzel, but Dr. Vente Chow was my professor in most of my hydrology courses. I think best professor I ever had, and he's he's a legend in terms of hydrology. And we get exposed to hydrology, hydraulics, drainage, and natural hazards and risk and system analysis. Actually, I was in the program in hydrosystems. Then, although I did all by my dissertation, I came back. Well, I think the first year I came back to Puerto Rico, I went to Emmitsburg to the FEMA training center. I took a training in earthquakes, I took a training in floods, I took a training in winds. When I came back, I began doing some conferences to students. Mm-hmm. And well, that's how everything began. 1987, we coordinated a conference sponsored by National Science Foundation. I think that was a rescue of American infrastructure. We invited people from South America to Canada, and we talked about the priorities and the agenda to rescue America's infrastructure. That was 1987. 1989, we did another conference here and workshop, trying to define the agenda for natural hazards, wind, landslide, floods, and when, well, we went from there. I think from there on, we have been always working with natural hazards, mitigation. My expertise is in drainage and in education. And well, our department, the Department of Civil Engineering and Surveying here, most of our thrust, it's infrastructure, accidents, and natural hazards.
Now, going back to your time at Illinois, we're going to talk about this other stuff, and I really want to, but I want to go back to your time at Illinois for just a moment. I want our listeners to understand the significance of this man in your life, Dr. Ben Chien.
Oh.
Can you tell us who he is and why he is such a big deal?
Actually, Dr. Ben Yen, who passed away when he was 60, very young man. His expertise was in drainage and hydromechanics, and he was he was so excellent model to move you through education. And he was always challenging us and teaching us and sharing with us everything he had. I remember he could be awake until very early in the morning. Then we learned that was necessary in life. And but he was engaged, and he engaged us. He was coordinating international conferences like the International Conference on Drainage. He was coordinating that, and we participated with that. Those were excellent experiences. I had a chance also to work for the Illinois State Water Survey as a student, as a hydrologist analyst, and my supervisor was Dr. Bente Chow's first graduate students. That's Chris Singh. And that was amazing. Having those experiences, I think those are life-changing experiences because you never figure out that there's so many opportunities in life until you discover them.
That's absolutely right. And the hydraulics lab at Illinois is named after Bente Chow. What was it like to work in that lab?
It was great. Actually, when I was there, 1978 to 1982, the lab was mostly, well, at that time, there was a big change from physical modeling to
digital,
computer modeling. And I remember there was a rainfall simulator, there was a plume, there was so many physical models hooked to computer modeling that was a great experience for us because not only we saw that in the textbook, we could see that beside us, beside our offices. That was great. It was a great experience. And, I always have my professors in a very special place in my life and my heart.
You mentioned leaving your job to pursue these opportunities. Do you feel like you made the right decision after it's all said and done?
Oh, definitely. It changed my life. I think education, you see, and I really invite our students who are making decisions, and particularly those students who are very dedicated to studies, that they should very seriously consider not only going into professional practice, which is extremely important, but they should consider also going into education and research. There is a very high priority for us to push our future agenda in terms not only in basic knowledge and basic research, but also in applied research and transitioning everything that is discovered, all those outcomes to the users. That seems to me there is a huge opportunity, and nowadays there is much more acknowledgement to practical research combined with theoretical basic research to make sure that new knowledge goes very quickly to and is transitioned to users. And that's extremely important. One of the high priorities for National Science Foundation is not only doing research, but also doing partnerships with industry, other universities, and the communities to make sure that the research go into implementation as soon as possible.
Absolutely. I think we can both agree the CRC does that very well. You have done that very, very well. And let's start talking about that because there's a lot to unpack here. I want to mention another coastal resilience rock star, and I believe you came into contact with him during the start of your professorship at UPRM in 1988. What can you tell us, Professor, about your first meeting with Dr. Robert Whalin?
Oh, my goodness. Well, let me tell you, Dr. Robert Whalin has been very instrumental in terms of the opportunity that our department at university have had to make available educational and research opportunities for our students. In 1987, I think that was the first time he came over. He was the director of the Waterware Experiment Station at that time. Now let's say Engineer Research and Development Center in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and all their 7 labs. He came over trying to, expand with a great vision. As you know, Dr. Whalin is a great visionary, and he had a vision at that time. He saw opportunities, and at the first time he said, and actually the director of the department posed him a problem that we had at that time. We were just beginning our graduate school, and our students, we didn't have much funding to support them during summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told, he asked, what do you need? And the director told him, well, we need to keep our students at the university after their first summer here, because since they are not supported during summertime, they have to leave. And when they never come back because they get a job and they never come back. He said, okay, I'm going to give you an opportunity to bring 10 students to an internship at ERDC. Actually, he opened the opportunity for professors too. Well, everything started, I think it was like 1990, 1992, after exchanging, because the first thing he did was just to hire a couple of our graduates, who some of them have retired already, some of them are still there. He opened the opportunity of creating this summer internship program and what we call the Educational and Research Partnership Agreement, which at that time it was only his commitment and he directed everything. From there on, we have had hundreds and hundreds of opportunities that, thanks to him, to all those who follow him, to all the mentors at ERDC who support our graduates, to the administrators who participate in this. And, I'm afraid mentioning name because there are some stars and there are others that will be left out who they deserve to be in the list. But just to let you know, there are more than 700 of our graduates, of our students have participated in summer internship programs with ERDC in all 7 labs. 20 students from 20 different departments at the university have participated. Even one from the pharmacy department, which is from another university, and she was in Mayagüez at that time, participated. But the important thing here is he had a vision that he can provide opportunity to students. Remember, accessibility and opportunity, and they proved themselves. What happened? Well, our students proved to be excellent students. This is a win-win situation for both sides. Our students got educational experiences, research experiences, work experiences, all in once. And ERDC had the opportunity to recruit students from those, actually from all those over 700 interns. They have recruited over 80 of those, including one who became the director of the Coastal and Hydraulic Lab, and that's Jose Sanchez. He, after that, became the deputy director of the ERDC under Dr. David Pittman, who is the one who is in charge right now. He's the director and principal scientist. But I have to tell you, everything began because of Dr. Whalin. And we are part of CRC because Dr. Whalin invited us. He trusted us. And, well, we try to do our best to comply with the expectations. But let me tell you, if I am, there is no way I can fill our box of thanks for Dr. Whalen's, because he has always had ideas, initiative, energy, vision, but particularly vision. Because after Dr. Whalin came out, he went to the Army Research Lab. Well, Dr. Marcuson came. He was the president of the ASE at that time. And he took it from Dr. Whalin, left it, and he said, Dr. Whalin, in charge me, this has to be better. And from there on, all those directors that were coordinating this program, they have done better and better and better, with ending up with Dr. David Pittman. He was here in March, updating our partnership, our educational partnership agreements, and he knows us very well. And, well, he still has a great bunch of our graduates working for him. And we are so proud, we are so grateful to all the directors, the mentors, the coordinator, Evelyn Villanueva, Carlos Ruiz, and all those who graduated from here who now are occupying leadership positions. Those are our ambassadors everywhere in the world. We are very proud of them.
It's so remarkable to me. And I want to dial it down for our listeners so they understand the significance of this. This happenstance meeting between Dr. Whalin and you, Professor, back in 1988, it really did change the course of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the course of history itself, because had it not happened, who knows who would be in positions right now? But it's because of you. It's because of you. And once again, at the time, Dr. Whalin, he was the technical director of the Engineer Research and Development Lab, and that's an offshoot of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Dr. Chris Massey also works for them. We had him on the show a while back. Great episode. Encourage everybody to go and listen to that one. But at the time of the meeting, Professor, would you say that there was a push from the federal government to get more Hispanic students into the federal research pipeline?
Well, actually, you know that the federal government had certain policies to include minorities. But you see, the way I see this is that minorities what need is are opportunities, because our students can compete with anybody. It doesn't matter if they are minorities or not. No, we have Puerto Rican women, Latin American, but if you take all that out, they can compete with everybody. At least that's the way I feel, and I think that's the way they have performed. And it's if you tell me if our students participate in this internship because they are minorities or Hispanic or from Puerto Rico, I'll tell you plain right away, no. I think they are recruited because ERDC, West at that time and ERDC found out that this is a good place to recruit good professionals, excellent human beings, and they get committed to the mission of the institution. That I think that's what they have proven during all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, how many students did you send off to ERDC, and then how many eventually ended up getting hired?
Yeah, my estimates is that, and I don't have the exact number, but it's over 700 students in total. And this worked this way. We send up to 40 students during summertime. It depends on the statement of work that they provide. And they spend 10 weeks there. They are paid based on the federal government rates. And they are registered in a 3-credit course. That means that experience, they can write a proposal, write a paper, they can make a presentation, oral presentation, PowerPoint presentation. They write a poster. Sometimes they publish those papers. And, well, they have a great experience. Some of them repeat and they go back because, well, they continue doing what they were doing. Some of them come back and keep on working during the year long. Some projects have been sponsored at the University of Puerto Rico and Mayagüez, sponsoring some professors. And that means that they have sponsored theses, they have sponsored projects,
right? They
have sponsored research work, they have sponsored professors to go there and stay 1 week, 1 month, the whole summer. We have done publications together, presentations together. We coordinate activities, like many of the activities that we do with the Coastal Resilience Center are done because we coordinate with the hydraulic lab, the Coastal and Hydraulic Lab, or the Environmental Lab, or the Geotechnical and Structure Lab. And in that way, we figure out common interests, and then we go and put together activities that benefit all three, our audience, our project, and ERDC.
Outstanding. And the number you mentioned, Professor, 700, that is congruent with the figures that I saw from other sources. So your memory is spot on.
And you asked me about how many they have recruited.
Yeah.
Over 80. I think they still have over 50 working for them, because once they go there, after a while, well, they may move out to other federal agencies. But also, there is one very special case. One of the students who wanted to work somewhere else, I oriented her. She went to ERDC. She worked for Dr. Whalin and Dr. Pittman. And then she went to work for a company in Florida, Kimley Horn. She brought that company back to Puerto Rico. Now she's the Secretary of Transportation and Public Works in Puerto Rico.
Once again, I just can't say how remarkable it is enough. It's really life-changing, history-changing things that have happened here because of an educator like yourself. It's real special. And you've done so much. Oh, please go ahead. I see you'd like to.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that there is no way that I can take credit for all this. We have had a commitment to do this because, we get committed to this. But, there is a huge number of people who work behind this. First of all, those who have the vision, Dr. Whalin, the directors who support this in their institutional policy. Then those who coordinate, point of contact, Dr. Carlos Ruiz, Evelyn Villanueva, who are those who work, they do what I do over here. But also the mentors. Those are the ones who take the students day in and day out, and they support them, they train them, they lead them, and they work like partners. That's a unique experience. Then I have all the people who work over here who support us, including students, administrative personnel, the university. That means this is a whole team activity. And, it's amazing, because the only thing I can say is, we are so fortunate to be able to work with this amazing kind of people, committed people, competent people that really make things happen.
Without a doubt, the network that we have it's humbling to be part of it, and it's even more humbling to be able to talk to people like you. From where I'm sitting, there's so many wonderful things and so many wonderful avenues to go down. Not enough time to talk about everything, but we will absolutely try and continue to make headway here. Speaking of that, I want to go back to 1994. You had just gotten appointed the director of the Civil Engineering Department at UPRM. Tell me, what was the first thing you really wanted to do in that position? What perspective were you bringing to the table after working with these students and getting them plugged in to ERDC?
Well, actually, I began working with students more or less at that time, because I began in summer 1993 was the first time I went there. I took over after 1993, because that began with the other directors before I was there. Mm-hmm. But when I got in, I was interim director for a short period of time. At that time, I became member of the University of Puerto Rico Board of Trustees by election. And I had the opportunity of participating in all those debates of the university policy. The Board of Trustees at that time was composed of 10 appointees by the governor and 3 by election, 2 professors and 1 student. I was one of the professors by election. And that was a great experience. When I came back, I had been member of the Academic Senate, Administrative Board, University Board, and we were learning about the university policies and everything. One of I think, things that I really appreciate in my life is I learned very early in my life parliamentary procedures, parliamentary law, debating, and that has to do with debating ideas, not debating people. Focusing on learning when you debate, not focusing on winning a debate. And I think that gives you a lot of opportunity to listen to people, to make sure that people in the teams, everybody have roles, and you are not above anybody, you are not below anybody, and that helps you, lead into things that not you alone, but the whole team want to do. And at that time, I think there was a very high priority in terms of pushing research ahead. Well, at that time, we were launching our PhD program in the department. Actually, it began in 1994. And at that time, well, our PhD program was in structures, transportation, and environmental engineering was not an option. Well, I felt like there was a great opportunity in the environmental area, and then we partnered with ERDC. And when I sat down with Dr. Whalin, and I asked him if it was possible to send somebody to help us launch our PhD program. Then they sent one professor for one semester and one professor for a month. I was Dr. Carlos Ruiz, who is a graduate from here, and Dr. Paul Schroeder, specialist in environmental engineering in the environmental lab. And after that, we put together our environmental option. Nowadays, we have our option in structures, transportation, and environmental engineering. And well, although in masters, we have also construction and geotechnical engineering, well, we try to match those students who want to go into PhD to this area. We have been facing many challenges in terms of civil engineering demand nationwide and in Puerto Rico. And that's why the demand for civil engineers nationwide is very high, one of the most demanded engineering professions in the nation. And this because, well, we need to make sure that they understand the opportunities. And I think we are coming back after the recession after 2008. We went down, down, down. And I think then all the natural disaster came, and there are opportunities now in the reconstruction of Puerto Rico, and there is a very high demand for civil engineers. As an idea, well, as a fact, we admitted almost 200 students in civil engineering this past August. Actually, I began serving as a director in January 1994, and I finished in August 9, 2023. I came out, this semester is my first semester doing research and teaching, but it has been a great, great experience. I have to acknowledge all the professors who have been my models, the students who have been my inspiration, and the administrative personnel who have been my guidance through all that journey. So let me tell you, it's been a great journey, and I'm very satisfied. And now we move on to new and better things.
That's a long time to be in the hot seat, Professor. You spent many, many years in that position.
Right.
What does the future hold for you?
Well, actually, right now we are working. I'm working with this CRC project. We are aiming at competing for our 10th year. We will try to see if we can bring a national conference here to celebrate our 10th year in the CRC. Let's see if that goes through. But yeah, we would love to bring a national conference to Puerto Rico, to put together all those working in resilience, and to share all the learning experiences, but also to see where our status of reconstruction of Puerto Rico and lessons learned are. And I think that will be a great, great opportunity. I would like to discuss this with Dr. Richardson and with the whole team to see how it fits, because it seems to me it will be a great way of culminating a decade of working with resilience and natural hazards. And I think Puerto Rico will be a great test bed and a great place to celebrate that and put in perspective the agenda for the next 10 years.
Ooh, I would agree. You mentioned something a while back that I want to touch on, talking about when you were working as the director down there. It's when it comes to debate, it's not about winning, it's about learning. And you've provided so many opportunities for your students to really learn. And those students have gone on to do some really incredible things and publish some remarkable works. Two of those works are coming to mind here. What can you tell us about Louis A. Godoy, also Ali Safar and his book?
Let me tell you. Which book you mentioned?
There's The Theory of Elastic Stability from Luis, and then also Ali Safar and the work that he was doing.
Let me tell you, Dr. Godoy, it's one of the most outstanding professors we have had here. It was a great privilege to have him here. He's not only an outstanding scientist and researcher, he has published many books and publications, but he is one of the most outstanding researchers and faculties in Argentina. My last communication with him was today at lunch. He was here. He retired from here. Now he's been retired, but he's still in the Argentina Academy of Science. I think he presides that, or he's in a very high position. He's still very active doing research. But Dr. Godoy did so many great things. First, he directed the Civil Infrastructure Research Center that we have here. He founded a journal, an international journal that we've been publishing for 20 years. That's a international journal on natural hazard accidents and civil infrastructure. That was his baby with Dr. Luis Suarez. But also, he was an outstanding professor, and that's that book that you mentioned, Theory of Elastic Theory. That's I don't recall the exact name, but it's a theory of structural, elastic structural, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a very unique publication in his field. But he also published another book, which I had a chance to read and review. It was the history of engineering mechanics, and he was so competent. He was present in most of the most outstanding organizations in the world. And well, he became a friend, he became a brother, but he became a leader in everything we did with research. Now he's retired, but he is still in our hearts, and he is part of our department forever.
It's outstanding. I saw that you got a considerable mention in that book, and so I wanted to bring it up and talk to you about it. Yeah, he definitely holds you in high regard. So,
he's and let me tell you, that's all his credits. But we had a very close friendship, and we supported each other all the time, and still we have a very strong friendship. Even if we are very far away, our friendship is very close. But I just want to let you know that there one professor working with the CRC just finished a textbook, and he through the CRC, he began working with, I asked him one day, we need something to be written in terms of resilient design. Do you have anything? He began working on that. He gave several talks and classes, and next semester we are going to teach a course on that. He's publishing a book in that, and that's CRC outcomes.
Now I'm so glad you mentioned that. Let's talk about the CRC. What's wild to me is that You were a major player in the coastal resilience game before the CRC was even around. You and Dr. Whalin, you were making things happen for what, 25 years? And this is before DHS even thought to start up this Center of Excellence. Tell us, what was it like to get brought on board with the CRC? Did you get a phone call? How did all that unfold?
Oh, well, actually, a couple of years before that, and I don't remember how many years, but it was during Katrina. Dr. Godoy wrote a proposal for a rapid, one of those rapid projects to go to New Orleans and evaluate the impacts of all these forces in tanks, because his expertise is in structural shells. And then, well, we wanted to take advantage and look the impacts of all these forces in different structures. At that time, we had a student, Norberto Nadal. He works at the Coastal and Hydraulic Lab. He's very well known all around the world in terms of his work, in terms of predicting hurricanes and hurricane forces and everything. He was a graduate student here. He did his bachelor's, master's, and PhD here. And he was working in a project that I had, and that was called, although I wasn't his mentor, I wasn't his committee, but it was my project. It was the impacts of floods on structures. And that we began very simple. There is a curve from the US Army Corps of Engineers which says that the damage is proportional to the height of water. But knowing hydraulics, you know that velocity has something to do because it produces momentum.
Sure.
And I asked him if it was possible to question these curves in terms of what is the damage causing structures due to water forces. And he began working on that, and we went 3 dimensions: water level, water velocity, and damage. And we found that there was a huge difference in terms of the estimates of the damage in a building if you consider or you don't consider velocity. He published that. That's been published. And then he went to the Coastal and Hydraulic Lab, and he's been working with that since then. And he actually did a great job. And part of the contribution was to continue working in terms of forces that are exerted on structures. Like, we began doing very simple hydrostatics, hydrodynamics,
right,
flotation, debris impacts, waves. Then we had the tsunami, huge tsunami that occurred at that time. And then we included tsunami forces. And all of a sudden, we were analyzing structural elements, structural components, all by themselves, all together. And that was a beautiful publication. And then I'm very glad that he had the opportunity of being hired by ERDC, and he has had a great career working in the Coastal and Hydraulic Lab. And everything began with those very simple activities that we were doing at that time. But the question was how I was called. First time Dr. Whalin called me, we were in Katrina's area in I think we were in Biloxi or in New Orleans, doing all this for a week. And he called us and he told us, well, we need a proposal. We had to do it with all the limitations. Well, we didn't qualify. That was the first round of the center that was approved. We were not included. When the second round came, he called us again and asked me if we could put together a proposal. I said, in education. I said, well, that's our area of interest. We have needs. I think that contributes a lot to our undergraduate and graduate students and faculty. The theme is what we do. Well, we competed, and thank God we are here.
Now, you've seen the pre-CRC era then, and then also the post-CRC era. Are things better now? Is the change, in fact, good?
Actually, our experience with CRC has been extraordinary. We have done things that we never thought we could do. First of all, I had a partner at that time, Dr. Ricardo Lopez was my partner at that time. When he retired, then Dr. Carla Lopez de Puerto and Dr. Raul Zapata jumped in, and they were been working with me. But our students have been champions, doing everything that we do, coordinating things. There is a lot of administrative things that need to be done. And now we have Luisa Feliciano, who she's finishing her PhD, and she's been working with all the administrative things there, supporting us. But she has taken, I think, 5 or 6 of FEMA certificates already. She's an electrical engineer as a BS. She has a master's degree in electrical engineering, and he's finishing a PhD in environmental engineering, but she's working with natural hazards and CRC, and she's great. That's one of the best. That means that we began aiming at doing some kind of formal, and we called it at that time informal, we switched to professional education. And all of a sudden it expanded because after all these hazards, extreme events that we experience producing disasters, the demand for education increased extremely rapidly. Then we try to put together, at least coordinate forum where people can exchange their idea, bringing idea for thesis, special projects, experience learning activities. And well, we did all of the above. And I think we keep on looking forward to expand everything that we do in this area.
I would say so, especially because the report that you did that was just published by ERDC, that was a big deal about the basin erosion.
Yeah, that was one day, because that was the field trip. But there were 3 days of activities. The first day was a field trip, the second day was a conference, and the third day was a workshop. We took the field trip that is in the proceedings, and during the workshop we worked most of the solutions and everything, and that worked perfectly. Yeah. And it took a while coordinating that, but I like the outcome because it's a good model what things could be done, particularly with natural and nature-based solutions to abate or mitigate the impacts of natural hazards.
This is definitely pertinent to where you are and also to other places. The work you're doing, it scales. That's the most important thing about it. It's almost like Puerto Rico is almost a testing ground. And with all the projects that you've seen and done, what do you think the outlook is here for your island and also abroad? How has resiliency across the board evolved? And also, what does the future look like here with federal involvement with agencies like DHS?
It's interesting because in January I had a chance to meet Dr. Dmitry Kusenov. He's the undersecretary. He was in San Juan with his team, and well, I have the privilege. Actually, Dr. Richardson invited me to be with him. We had an hour meeting together, and one of the questions that he asked was more or less what you are asking. I wasn't prepared with that, but I live here. Let me tell you that I think Puerto Rico woke up because, and I said this in a national conference when the science offices of the federal government meet every year. Actually, I asked the question if the federal government were prepared, or at least FEMA, for Maria. The question is, we were not prepared for Maria. Not the federal government, not Puerto Rico, not the community, not the household, not the individuals. Because we learn from experiences. One of the things that I have learned is that since we usually have frequent extreme events, not the most extreme, but frequent extreme, let's say 10-year floods, 20-year floods, 5-year floods, you develop a sense of false security and safety because, like my neighbor said, oh, Maria went by, my window didn't blow out, I am safe. I said, you were experiencing 90 miles per hour winds, and those are 175 miles per hour gusts. Don't be so sure that you are safe. That's the false sense of security and safety that people develop if you do not experience the most extreme events. And one of the things that we have learned is that this is extremely serious at all levels, at the governance level, at the professional level, at the codes level, at the community level, at the household level, and individual level. I think everybody needs to play the role. And I feel like in Puerto Rico, there is a very high priority in all agencies and their community and municipalities with all these hazard mitigation plans that people get aware of the needs. You might be aware that there is an injection of, I don't know, $84 billion approved for Puerto Rico. Maybe a fraction of that, and I have the numbers. Let me take a look right away because I think it's important. Yeah, it's $83.9 billion have been allocated for Puerto Rico after Irma, Maria, and all the hurricanes and the earthquakes. Of those, $77.9 billion have been obligated. From those, over $30 billion have been dispersed. No, $3.9 billion have been dispersed, and $70.5 billion from the hurricanes have been dispersed. Obligated, I'm sorry, those are obligated. The total funds, and I have something here written, but from hurricanes, $70.5 billion have been obligated, from which only 24 have been dispersed. That means that we are in our way of recovery. There are 23,000 projects. Let me give you the numbers because I made my homework. There are only, I think this is important for people to know because this is public information.
Sure.
But there are about 453 total projects in the pipeline, from which I think there are, like, in procurement are like 1,300. There are in planning, there are 13,000. In progress, in design, there are 2,000. And so on. In permitting, there are 52. In procurement are, in the construction part, 1,400. In progress, 2,600. That means that about I think it's about 25% or 1/3 of the projects are in the design or construction process. But we still have most of the projects are in the pipeline to be developed because this is a slow process.
Sure.
And that's important because what I'm trying to put on the table is there is a lot of opportunity for development in Puerto Rico in the future. We need engineers, we need labor force, we need workforce, we need materials, we need equipment, and we need time.
And I think the the Luma project really drives all that home. The Luma project that's ongoing down there.
Oh yes, actually, the energy project is one of the highest funding that is required, and of course, it's taking a while, but I'm pretty sure our first priority in Puerto Rico is energy. If you don't have energy, you don't have health, you don't have education, you don't have water, you don't have anything else. Yeah. That means that let's start with energy, which is extremely expensive in Puerto Rico. Let's put that in place, and then we can move on with other things. Of course, health, it's a very high priority. Without energy, it's a big challenge.
Indeed. Serious business and big issues. I want to go into some more lighthearted things as we wind down here and wrap up. Want to mention a somewhat high honor, one that you and I have both apparently earned. What can you tell the people about the RECONDO patch in Fort Bragg, North Carolina?
Oh my goodness. Actually, I have to bring, there is a faculty who will be retiring now in December. That's Professor Hiram Gonzalez. Hiram Gonzalez was in the Army. Hiram and I studied together. We are graduated, I think he graduated in 1976, I graduated in 1975. Then he went to the Army. He went all the way when he was called to the School of Generals to get trained, but he decided, do I go into the School of General or do I retire? At that time, we had a need in geotechnical engineering. He stayed in Puerto Rico. He helped us. After a while, we hired him. He was the one who brought Dr. Whalin here because he was assigned as a military to ERDC, to West. He brought him here, and he was the one leading the exchange and bringing Dr. Whalin to Mayagüez. And after when he retired, I hired him. While he was in the Army, he came here to finish his master's degree. In his first course he took, he was in my classroom in groundwater hydrology. First we were classmates, then he was my student, then he was my partner as a faculty, and now he's retiring. When he came, he led the assessment process, ABET assessment process. We went through 5 excellent accreditation processes under his leadership, and now he's retiring in December. And the thing is that he invited me as institutional representative to go to Fort Bragg to represent our institution. I had no idea what I was going to do. They gave me some boots, uniform, hat, and there we go. And then they asked us, when we were there were 100 professors representing universities in the States for the ROTC. And one of the professors was like 65 years old, asked the General Lyle, if he could do the rappelling exercise because students were doing some demonstration. He laughed like a child, but he insisted and he said, okay, those who want to go there, you can go and do it. Then I went, one of the like 50 volunteers, I went and did the rappelling, and that was fun. And then this guy asked, well, what do we need to get the RECONDO badge that these cadets get? Yeah. And he laughed again, and he said, I'm serious. And he said, well, if you do 4 of the 10 drills that they do, we'll give it to you. Well, we went to the Slide for Life, and I lost my glasses. And I cannot see without glasses. Then, because we went all the way to a river, then we went to another a drill, that you have to go over the river in a 1 foot wide bridge, and you have to walk through. Because I couldn't see anything, I went all the way to the other side. And the last one was that you went all the way to 40, 50 foot high tower, and you have to crawl over one of those ropes all the way to the middle and then fall. I did it too. Then I got my RECONDO badge. But the story doesn't finish there. When we came next year, the General Lyle came to Puerto Rico and we went and had lunch together. He asked me for the RECONDO badge. I had no idea where was my RECONDO badge. I had no idea the importance of that. He actually gave me a hard time at that day. Second year he came. He asked me for the RECONDO badge. I had it there. Like I have here my logo.
Right.
I had it there. And he said, oh yeah, I have it in my office.
I love that you got a chance to earn that. For our listeners, if you don't know, RECONDO, it's an award that you can get as a cadet during the Leadership Development and Assessment course. That course typically takes place between your junior and senior year. And if you perform well enough during certain evolutions, you can earn that badge, and it's a mark of distinction. And I love the fact that, Professor, you have earned that. And we share in that. We share the honors. So,
thank you. I didn't understand that at that time, and I remember that they said that all this dress is just to grow confidence in yourself. And actually, at that time, I was like 40 years old, but I was still running 100 meters, 200 meters, throwing javelin, and playing softball. I was in good shape. I could do it. I was 140 pounder at that time. I could do it. I was in good shape, but I had never tried those drills in my life. That was my first time.
And it very well may be that part of your physical fitness is why the students looked up you so much. I believe, it's a big part of, it's a foundation, definitely a foundation for everything.
At that time, not anymore.
And speaking of fitness and athleticism, you've got a big connection to the world of the wide world of sports. What can you tell us about the NCAA and a certain organization of which you are a part?
Well, actually, I was a member of the NCAA Division II Management Council for a couple of years. Represented the independent conferences. That was a great experience because, I am in civil engineering. Most of the people there are physical education professionals. But at that time, I owned a professional volleyball team at that time. I own a professional volleyball team since 2000 to 2020, I co-owned. And well, we were very well involved in volleyball, NCAA rules, regulations, and everything. Actually, we participated in all Final Four volleyball activities almost every year. And well, it was very challenging. And I have to tell you that I developed a lot of respect to Division II. They are extremely demanding. They have that you are a student first and you're an athlete after that. And they put a lot of effort for you to succeed as an athlete. And that was great. And University of Puerto Rico and Mayagüez, it's a member of the independent conferences with other 4 institutions. And well, we participate there, although, the distance is a little bit challenging, but it's a great honor. Actually, when that was approved at the University of Puerto Rico, I was at the university board. And I was part of those who approved it. That was a great experience.
I would love to hear so much more about that. We will have to do a part 2, I think, Professor, because we haven't even scratched the surface here. You've done so much. There's much more we could talk about, but I feel like I've taken up so much of your time already. We've already gone over on time, and I'm grateful to you for that. The time you've lent to me here. Wrapping up, though. Is there anything that you want to say to our listeners? Anything you want to talk about? Any issues you want to highlight right now? Because the floor is most definitely yours.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me. First of all, I have to thank you, Dr. Lutek, for leading this organization. I think he's a great leader. I think he leads by example. I have to thank Dr. Whalin, Dr. Tom Richardson, who have been leaders, very supportive in everything that we do. Very, they comprehend almost everything we do, and they support us. They do a great job. Anna, it's a star. I think without Anna, I don't know where the ship will be. Anna, it's great. I think she does a great job since day one until now, and we feel very supported by all of them. But working with the partners, the PIs and co-PIs of all the projects, it's been a privilege. It's something that you never think that you have that opportunity. You never take for granted that those opportunities and that privilege, having share, seeing the kind of work that they do, the impact that the work that they do in their universities nationwide, the way they advance knowledge, and the way they transfer knowledge to people. For me, it's amazing. Because when you are in high school, you never think about this. The only thing I thought when I was in high school is that I was obliged to go to university, but I wanted to play baseball. I received a fellowship to play baseball and volleyball. At that time, I couldn't play any of those because they suspended the baseball at that time. But yeah, I had to choose into two universities. One with volleyball, one with baseball. I selected baseball, and they didn't play baseball at that time. After a semester, I figured out I couldn't play baseball and study engineering. I decided to study, and but it was, the privilege of being part of a team with the limited role that we can play, but bringing and exposing the situation in Puerto Rico, which bring diversity to the whole picture, and the Coastal Resilience Center of Excellence to the Department of Homeland Security. I think it's important. Puerto Rico is just an example because there are many Puerto Ricos all around the world and all around the United States. I mean, communities with needs, with limitations, and equity is not so easy to reach. And we talk about the perception of equity, the reality of equity, and the goal of equity. And I think we are working in our Transportation Research Board project. We are working with this, trying to quantify and do something that we can reach those goals. But it seems to me that I have learned so much about the broad scope of Homeland Security, of the federal government, and the projects that the people have developed, either in research or education, which really amazes me. And the only thing I can say is thank you to all those who make this possible, and the people at the Department of Homeland Security who support us and have been supporting us. And the good news that there might be a possibility for a 10th year. We'll try to go for it.
Yes, indeed. Professor, all I could say is thank you so much for being on the show. I loved our conversation. And to be honest, I can't wait to do it again because, like I said, we've only scratched the surface here. And everything you said wrapping up just makes me want to continue talking. So maybe a part 2 in our future?
Definitely. Remember that I mentioned to you when you invited me one thing. I think it's important to bring our students to tell their stories and my partners, because I love Carla Zapata, Dr. Alisa Farr. It would be great to hear what is he developing in terms of resilient design? I think that will be impacting the whole nation. I think that will be a very unique textbook. And we are willing to do it online from Puerto Rico to an audience with our partners in the Coastal Resilience Center. I think it will be good to bring, like we have some of our students, graduates have been working, one with the US Army Corps of Engineers. One is graduating, she's great. And I think those stories, it will be great to be heard, because I think they have made a big difference in their careers. Actually, there is one case that is doing her PhD in University of Florida at Gainesville, Torres, and she's an excellent student, and she decided to study coastal engineering, particularly the infrastructure and structures, because she had the experience of working with us.
Ooh. Stories to be told, and we will definitely tell them. Looking very much forward to that. Once again, Professor, thank you so much for the conversation. Let's talk offline about what you just talked about. I'll follow up with you on that.
I would like to congratulate you and thank you, because I think it has made a big difference what we are doing and what things are coming out. And I love the work you do. Congratulations. Thank you for your patience. I try to edit all my Spanglish in this conversation, but that's the way we are. That's a reflection of diversity. Actually, though, that's one of the things that we need to consider in the future. Diversity requires people to learn not only language, but the technical terms. Not everybody understands the technical terms. Communication is a very high priority in terms of educating people. And as you see, when many students in Puerto Rico, they have to, and those are things that I really admire. We are Spanish speakers, and they end up to be bilingual. And I am very proud that our students speak better English than we do. That's great. They are better than we are. And but those are the challenges that we have, and we have to live with that.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Professor. Very, very grateful to you. It's an honor to be telling the stories of rock stars such as yourself. And you really are rock stars. And I hope our listeners can really, really grab hold of that, because the work you're doing is critical and the world needs to know about it. This is so important for everybody. Lives are hanging in the balance. Money's in the balance. It all goes back to this, the CRC. More to follow. But until then, to our dear listeners, check out our website, coastalresilienceCenter.org, and look at all of our Twitter and social feeds through Linktree. That's Linktree/Coastal Resilience. Thank you so much for tuning in. Always, always, always so very thrilled to be seeing you Shoreside. Bruce Rosenblum signing out from Shoreside, heading out for a lovely Thanksgiving. Next episode in December. We'll see you real soon.